Hey, this is Mike Calabrese.
And Bridget Carney from Lake Street Dive.
And this is Walking the Floor.
I'm walking the floor over you.
Walking the floor.
I'm walking the floor. Walking the floor over you. Hola, senors and senoritas. This is Chris Shiflett, and you're listening to episode 202 of your favorite podcast, Walking the Floor. I am, as always, your host, Chris Shiflett, ready to dive into another fantastic interview today. But first, I'll give you a little news. I'm going to be opening up for Social Distortion up in Reno on October 8th, and those tickets are on sale as of a few days ago, so Google that, and if you're in the Reno area and you want to come out to the show, I think it's going to be fun. I haven't done a solo gig in ages, so I got to learn my songs, which is always tough. Learn my songs. I think I'm going to learn a few cover tunes too, just to make it fun. So that's what's coming up, and might be jumping on maybe another show somewhere, but I don't have confirmation on that yet. So there's more to come. Stay tuned. That's what's happening. And also tell you, I was out in Nashville last week doing a little bit more recording and got most of another 3 songs done with Jaron and the crew out there. And I think that brings us up to like 10 songs maybe in the can, which pretty much feels like a record. So I think we got most of a record completed. I got to go back out there and sing some vocals and do some overdubs and mix the whole thing, but I think we got a record on our hands here. So look for info on that coming soon as well. All right, let's talk about our good friends at Zounds.com. You love Zounds.com. It's the best place on the whole internet to get your music gear because they have free shipping on every order with no exceptions and no exclusions. And that is because they got 3 warehouses strategically located all over the United States to get you your gear faster than anybody else. So like 90% of their orders arrive within 2 days or less. That's right, Zounds.com. All right, let's get to the interview.
Obviously, we're at the beginning of something.
You know, sometimes I do these interviews and then I just get overwhelmed with other stuff and they kind of sit around for a little while before I actually post them. And so my apologies to Mike and Bridget from Lake Street Dive, because this was all the way back in April that we talked. And I imagine that since then, like every other band, they've probably had all kinds of stuff happen because, you know, it's COVID times and the schedule just changes all the time. At least it does in my world. I'm sure it does in theirs too. I checked their website, and it looks like they're on the road right now. So good to see they're back at it. And it looks like they're touring through the end of October. And when we spoke, they had just put out their new record, obviously, back in March. Make sure you give that a spin. Make sure you go buy a ticket to one of their shows if they come through your town. We had a good little chat about all kinds of stuff, jazz and music school, and the joys of playing Dungeons and Dragons. That's right, Dungeons and Dragons. So this is Mike Calabrese and Bridget Kearney from Lake Street Dive on Walking the Floor.
It's a fatal attraction, it's a little scary, but I got a plan of attack and I'll get us there someday.
You know, my podcast over the years has been mostly focused on like Americana and country artists, and I've been kind of trying to make an effort to broaden my musical horizons for the show. So thank you for coming and doing this. But then I looked at your Wikipedia page and it said that you guys started out as a free country band. It's like, I'm trying to get away from that shit, man. But first off, what is free country as a genre? What does that mean?
I don't think we know to this day. We tried it, and it didn't quite work out.
I mean, is that something that got pinned on you on Wikipedia, or was that in fact what you guys were trying to do?
I mean,
that was us who came up with that. Yeah.
And the story at McDuck.
Well, I think we were in school together at the New England Conservatory. We were all studying jazz, and a lot of what was cool at the school at that time was like freely improvised music. And so we were interested in doing free improvisation, but also kind of thought maybe we could sort of graft it onto like a more country Americana sonic world, but unfortunately we were pretty amateur at both of those things. So putting them together didn't work well. I think the person who's come closest to executing that vision is Robert Ellis. I've seen him do something that I might call Free Country.
Yeah,
Totally. Yeah, because the original idea for Lake Street Dive was a dive bar band, like a honky tonk. That was McDuck's vision. So it was like, what if we were a honky tonk band and freely improvised and, you know, freaked out the square dancers? And I think as soon as we discovered we liked pop music, we just moved on.
I mean, but like, do you care about sort of genre classification? Like, where do you guys sort of see yourself residing? Because, you know, your music, it's like bits and pieces of a lot of different styles in there.
I feel like as you know, genres progress and things evolve in the music world, it's kind of like genres are starting to get kind of arbitrary and almost like they're looping back around into themselves and eating their tail, and it's kind of doesn't really make sense anymore. And I always say that we're a song band, because when people ask what kind of a band we have, I'm like, we're a pop band, but not the pop you're thinking. Because it's like we draw from 60s, 70s pop when it was like, you know, sometimes Carole King at the Brill Building jamming out tunes, you know, and that kind of vibe, you know, but it's definitely not, you know, we're not sitting around, we're not like creating the music in computers. We don't have that skill, you know, so we're kind of like, it's like old school pop, but we also don't want to sound like a retro band, you know, we don't go for that either.
Does that, like, when you can always kind of tell what a band is by their peers and like who they tour with and that sort of thing, like who do you guys tour with? Who are your sort of musical, you know, pals out there and out on the road? We've done some stuff with Emily King recently, and we're definitely kind of Wolfpack adjacent pals with a lot of that scene, and also more on the Americana side, we have interacted with a lot of artists in that world, Brandi Carlile and Yola, and it's a real mix. We've never found a super comfortable like genre-based home for ourselves, which was challenging in the beginning because it wasn't as easy as saying like, oh, you have a bluegrass festival, we're a bluegrass band, put us on your stage. You sort of had to like just get someone to listen to you one way or another and then welcome you into whatever kind of party they were putting on. But at this point, I'd say it's definitely a blessing because it leaves us free to continue to experiment and like be whoever we want to be moving forward, which as a band that's been together for 16 years, I'm very grateful that we still have that freedom. Yeah, it's interesting because, you know, people that from a marketing viewpoint, you know, people always want to sort of put you in one box or another for obvious reasons. And it's just easier to sell a band if you're selling it as the part of this thing or whatever, you know, so from your management, your label, those folks. But I imagine if you have success without that in the long run, it's probably a blessing.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, playing the tunes that we wrote and the styles we liked to explore. But like just the fact that Bridget plays upright bass, you know, she's playing like pop soul upright bass. It was almost like a visual thing where it was like, you can play our bluegrass festival. You have an upright bass. That it's more acceptable, you know. I feel like it kind of, you know, like what Bridget was getting at. It's like, you know, coming at the music as like, you know, landing with a web, you know, as opposed to like a couple of distinct points. You know, one of our early tours as openers was with Yonder Mountain String Band, great guys, and we would open up other shows, and their audiences loved us, which was really great. And another band we opened for and got a lot of traction with was a band called Los Straitjackets, and a bunch of dudes who wore luchador masks and played like 50s surf rock. And so I don't know, it's just like fun time music. I don't know. I think if you're doing that, you're going to be people are going to want to listen to you.
Bridget, when you guys were first starting out, how bummed were your bandmates that you showed up for your first van tour with that stand-up bass? How many arguments did that cause?
Well, our first tours were not even van tours. They were in Mike's old Buick, like 4-door sedan. So
Buick Century.
Yeah, we would have the bass riding in the passenger seat, and then 3 of us in the back seat with the neck like nestled between us. So yeah, it was.
Were you like, Mike? We're gonna put you on the bongos because I got to get this thing into the car. So there's no room for for your shit.
I played a small drum kit back then, and everything fit in the bass drum in the trunk. So it was like, yeah,
nice. So I know you guys have a new album recently out, and obviously none of us can really like tour and promote records the way we normally do. So what are you guys doing to spread the word besides, the wonder of the Zoom call?
We got together and made some videos in February. It was the first time that the 5 of us had been together for almost a year, which was wild to not see each other for that long, as I'm sure, many musicians can relate to that feeling of like this sort of road family that you're used to being around all the time, and you're just separated from one another for so long. So it was nice to get back together, and we just shot a bunch of things, played the songs live and taped it, and kind of slowly doling those out now. And yeah, we do have a couple gigs coming up, so that's exciting. We're going to be playing
proper gigs.
Full on gig. Yeah. We got 5 gigs in June that are outdoor, reduced capacity, distanced. But we also have 1 gig next week in Florida music festival.
Ooh, nice. What did you talked about how you hadn't seen each other for, like all of us were all kind of grounded this last year. Like, what non-music related stuff did you do? This was a great year for taking up new hobbies.
Well, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons once a week with our keyboard player.
For real?
Yeah. Aki and I and some other great musician pals of ours just started doing it. Yeah.
Is that like a throwback to your teenage years or something? Or are you just new into it as an adult? Like, this is something I always wanted to do. Now's the time.
Yeah, I'm a complete newbie. Aki had been into it previously and was actually super into it in the months preceding lockdown. Like, when we were recording the album, Aki and I were sharing an Airbnb, and we would come back after the session, and I would usually turn on an episode of Netflix or something. And Aki was watching these Dungeons and Dragons taped sessions. It's like you watch a group of other people play Dungeons and Dragons. And I was like, wow, this guy's really into this. And so it was a good, in a way, that was a good outlet for him to finally live his dream of playing Dungeons and Dragons several times a week.
When my oldest son was a little bit younger, he got really into D&D for about a year or so, and he would come back from his Sunday D&D session, and he would literally recount every moment of it, to the point where after a while I'd be like, all right, I get it. All right, you slayed the dragon. Okay, cool. I get it. Enough.
It's pretty hard to really relate it to another person. I think you kind of have to, because it's action packed. It really is. And yeah.
Mike, any new skills? COVID skills?
It started out, I got pretty good making a sourdough bread like a lot of people did, but then my wife and I had a second child. So
that's a hobby.
Talk about
that's hobbies, a full-time hobby.
Yeah, totally. It's kind of taking.
Well, what a good time to be off the road. That must have been fantastic.
And that was our calculus, in March and then into April, when it was like, oh yeah, we're not touring in August. It might be the fall. And then it was like, oh, we're not touring maybe ever again. We'll see. But we're like, let's do this now.
Yeah. Let's make sweet love and be making a baby.
There you go.
Yeah. I have 3 kids. I know how that goes. I get it.
Wow. Congrats.
Yeah.
Does it get easier?
No. Yeah. Well, I tell you what, I mean, it's a wild thing, you know. You spend those early years so frazzled and sleep deprived and like feeling overwhelmed. But God, man, the age my kids are at, like my oldest is looking at colleges now, and like, you know, they're all teenagers. I'm constantly gripped with this feeling of like it's about to end, and I just want them to be little babies again. So I know it's so cliche, but like savor every moment to the best of your ability, because it really does fly by.
That's what I keep hearing. Yeah.
Yeah. So with your new record, did you make this pre-COVID or post-COVID or a little bit of both? Like how did that go down?
Yeah, I mean, we were demoing and rehearsing and talking to the producer in 2019, you know, towards the end, and working on a lot of it on the road, and then recorded it early 2020. And we're definitely getting news reports towards the end of the session. And then maybe, was it even 5 days after we got back, Bridget, that it was like lockdown from the final day of our session. So it was like right under the wire. Wow. So, I mean, you guys have worked with a lot of different big time producers over the years, like Dave Cobb and T-Bone. And this newest one is Mike Elizondo, right? What were you looking for maybe this time that was different than what you guys had done in the past?
Well, our previous album, For Yourself Up, was the first time that we'd really self-produced. And so I think we learned a lot from that experience and had like a great time doing it. It was so fun. Like some of the best studio memories of mine are like working on that album, where it's really like a playground and you can try everything, you know, all of your wildest, craziest ideas, just go for it. But I think with this next album, after that experience, we were looking for someone to kind of bring us back to reality a little bit. And specifically, Mike Elizondo is somebody who has worked with a huge variety of artists and always manages to make the best version of them. You know, he doesn't necessarily have like a sound that you go to him to create that Mike Elizondo sound. It's more like he's able to take whatever you're good at and boost it. And so that was like really perfect, because we did have some ideas coming in, some production ideas, you know, where we've got a little bit of experience under our belts in that world, but he's like way better at everything. So we could throw ideas his way and he'd be like, oh yeah, I know how to do that. Like, let me grab this and grab that. And and just execute your vision to a really level of excellence.
I mean, I've worked with Dave Cobb on a couple of records, so I'm familiar with like his approach or his process or whatever. And from what I understand, I've never worked with T-Bone, but I think it's a similar thing, like record live in the room type of thing. Is Elizondo, was it that same kind of thing? Like, are you guys all in the room playing together, or is it more of a layered modern production style?
Yeah, Mike is coming from a, you know, live take, or at least like live spirit kind of world where it's, you know, I don't think we would move on to any other takes. Oh yeah, there's Russell. You know, we wouldn't move on if, you know, even if like, you know, even if the vocal take was good and we knew we were going to redo those anyway, Mike would be like, okay, that's part of it. You know, like there's the spirit in this thing. It's like, even though we need to like replace the guitar or, you know, add a couple bass things or whatever, he was really intent on us all isolated sound wise, but getting a good feeling out of the take, you know? And after that, it was like, clean it up. And there was this layered approach, but I feel like it was, when I think about all the elements on each song, it was less about how much we were producing it, or he was producing it, and how specific each element was. And I think that, because like some songs, it's like, it's us and extra keyboard and some background vocals, and that's it. But every bit is so perfect that the pieces fit together, and they kind of like, you know, they create something bigger than the sum of its parts. And I think that was, you know, because it's not overblown. It's not like layer upon wall of sound upon thing, you know, which was like, it's a fun way to do things, kind of often what we've done, but I think, it was so deliberate, the choices. So it was a little bit of both. It was like, get the good feeling there, get the band sound and feel, and then just dial in the sounds and anything else to knit it together.
I wanted to ask you about like how you guys get songs together, because there was a part in your bio that said, as a band, Lake Street Dive epitomizes democracy in action. And, oftentimes in groups, a little too much democracy can be a bad thing. It can be, have disastrous results at times. But so how does that work with you guys? Like when you're getting, so is everybody just kind of throwing ideas around? Are you writing together, or do you all bring in kind of fully formed songs? Like how do you guys do it?
Lately, we've been writing a lot in pairs. And so, everything is either in pairs or an individual that writes a song and brings it in. And even within those writing pairs, we almost never do it like in a room together or in a moment of liveness virtually or whatever. It's more a pass back and forth method. And that'll usually be sectional and not like top line bass layer. It's more like, okay, here's an idea that I have for a song. This is what it's about. I've written a verse and a chorus. Like, what do you think should happen next? That kind of thing. And so we were doing that while we were on the road, just kind of like go to your hotel room, work on something, pass it over to whoever you think might be good at completing it. And then bring in those songs that have like chords and form and melody and lyrics and bring them to life from there as a group with like the arrangement and sometimes feel changes, part changes, stuff like that.
I mean, you guys have been a band for a long time. So, I mean, obviously the way that you operate your band works for this group of people, but like, how do you, is that something that you have to manage, or is it something that's organic? Like, is it ever an issue? Like, I only got 3 of my ideas on the record and this person got 5. You know what I mean? Do you ever sort of have those tensions?
We're pretty good about it. I mean, there's always little things that you're like, oh no, I didn't get, they didn't like my song. But I think the answer to like whether it's organic or worked on is both, because there's definitely work and sort of diplomacy and mutual respect and like these things that you have to put into just making those group decisions together. But also like it would never work if we didn't already have like a really sound basis of like agreement on what kind of music we all like and what direction we want the band to go in. So I think we like stumbled upon a combination of people that did get along well in that way. And then we also like put in the work.
And you guys formed while you were going to music school, right? It's the New England Conservatory?
Yeah.
I see. I never went to music school, and it's something that kind of fascinates me. And I always think like someday when the band slows down, I'm going to take a couple years off and like just go to school somewhere and like to plug all those gaps of theory and stuff that, because it is, you pick all this stuff up along the way, but maybe you don't know what it's called or why it does X, Y, and Z. You know what I mean? It's music. It's just math, at the end of the day. So I'm always kind of fascinated by people that had that experience. So can you talk a bit about the New England Conservatory? Because I was looking at that online and it looks like fucking serious.
Yeah, it's a small school, small private school. I think it's like with higher ed, like master's and doctorate, it's like 800 kids. And NEC, it is small, but it's not like it's like cutthroat to get in. Like I remember hearing stories of people who would apply even to like, these other music schools you hear about, like University of North Texas, for instance, or like other state schools that have these badass music programs. And you're like, oh, I did look at my, like what I had to do to audition. And like this teacher was like screaming at me. And then we had to do all these drills in a big room. And it's not like that kind of cutthroat of a school. It's more like in a lot of ways, like the members of our band, like the more important thing was the fit. And I think NEC is kind of more about that. It's like, do you fit in with the way we do things here? Would you like to explore? And I often describe going to NEC as like a sandbox, because you could just like, you could be good at your instrument, but it was really like, where did you want to go with it? And that's why, you know, our band didn't have a problem forming at that school, because it was like, we showed up, we studied a bunch of things. I took a jazz big band arranging class at NEC, and I went to the teacher and I said, I want to arrange Life on Mars by David Bowie. Is that cool? I know that's classic rock. And he was like, that sounds awesome. You know, why wouldn't I let you do that? You know, so it was a school that was very open-minded, and you would audition, you'd like play your jazz standards and show that you understood the, you know, the lexicon of jazz, and then you would learn about jazz. But it was really like, what are you doing while you're here? It could be anything you want, and there's most likely a teacher that can facilitate that. And so, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. This damn Zoom thing, it's got just enough latency that it's hard to know when to jump in. Like when you're young and you're first going there, or all you guys, were you thinking like, I want to go to this school and then go on to be in a band? Or were you thinking, I want to be a session player, or I want to be in a symphony, or you know what I mean? Like, so where were you, or I want to be a film composer? Like, where were you thinking you were headed, and where did most of the kids sort of wind up that go there?
I definitely was going in thinking I wanted to be a jazz bass player, and kind of seeing maybe a life where I'd be like playing in clubs around New York City, and maybe touring a little bit or something. But it definitely like came as a pleasant surprise when we ended up forming this band that was like successful and you know, able to play like big stages like Red Rocks and stuff, because that's not at all what I envisioned for myself as a young person. In terms of whatever, I don't know, what did you imagine for yourself, Mike?
It was similar. I remember my parents asking me this, you know, and my dad was like, do you see what does it look like post graduation? I was like, I think I'm on a stage in a European country wearing a suit. You know,
a classy gig. A classy gig.
I'm only a classy guy.
Yeah.
But what's funny is that, like, I think at NEC, it's a sort of place where you're just going and doing a bunch of things that seem cool to you. But like, and I knew that like bands went on tours. I knew that kind of, you know, it was like in the periphery, but no one ever was like, you know, what you could do is like get on a tour bus and like go around and like play stadiums and like learn some tunes with a band, and like that could be, you could jump from bus to bus and like do that, or like studio to studio, you know. And it was kind of amazing when we first, especially when we, like the first time we got a tour bus, I was like, oh, we've become a band that does this thing that like nobody ever talked about to us, you know, especially since like you don't hear about jazz players really going on a tour bus, although they do, you know. It's more like I'm flying to Belgium for the weekend because that's, right, you know, or whatever, something like this.
Right.
Yeah, it was really, you know, we kind of like, I feel like we kind of like crept out. It's like we left the jazz party early without saying goodbye, and like somebody randomly invited us into another party that was like, you can tour and play pop music.
I mean, where does NEC sit, like, you know, relative to like maybe Berklee School of Music or like, you know, MIT? Like I always thought of like GIT as the place you go if you want to learn how to play like really fast arpeggios or play like Yngwie Malmsteen, you know. Like when you're going to NEC, are you like, look, wow, those MIT fucking ding dongs, man, that's not real.
Yeah,
like I guess like what are the other schools that are sort of in that league, you know, that are a little more, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, like I mean, it's like the other schools we applied to. It's like New School University, you know, which is now part of New York University, but like NYU is also there, like the Manhattan School of Music. You know, USC has a good jazz program. It's like these, but University of North Texas, you know, a lot of great jazz players went there. But like our NEC isn't, for better or worse, isn't this school. It's not like Guitar Institute of Technology where it's like if you want to do this type of music this is what you need to learn how to do it. And you have somebody who's a master at that being like, do this, you know,
Right.
and you're like, cool, I'm doing it. That's great. I mean, I didn't have that. We had no idea what we wanted to do. And I think NEC is like high level teachers, high level faculty, but like kind of like lost students, lost in a good way. You know, they know what they like in general terms, but in terms of like finding your own voice, I think that's what that school does best, as opposed to, you know, because I still can't play jazz very well. I'll be honest. You know, and
Worse and worse.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's been a while too, but, you know.
I mean, how many hours a day are you playing when you're in music school? Are you just playing around the clock?
Kind of, yeah. But it depends on who you are too. I mean, maybe you're at NEC, you might be somebody who's like playing mostly like duck calls right now. You know, you could be into like some really weird stuff, and that's cool too. And yeah, I think, well, one thing that is somewhat unique to NEC is that they have like a classical conservatory, a jazz conservatory, and then they have what they call the third stream, which is, you know, something else somewhere in between. So it's not necessarily like a pop department, which like Berkeley has that, and Berkeley has like production studios and recording schools and like all of these. But NEC more has like, here's a place for the no man's land music makers, and also like, so sort of emphasis on like there's a class that everybody has to take called development of personal style. And so that's like part of what they're teaching you to do is not just like play your instrument, but like, what do you want to do on that? You know, but how are you going to make your own voice as a musician? And also like there was some emphasis on learning things outside of your field too. There's like a freshman drumming class for everyone in the jazz department where you have to, no matter your instrument, like come in and learn like a little bit about like African percussion and Indian percussion. And like, whoa, what an amazing thing as an 18-year-old to like just have this completely different world of music introduced to you, and like different kind of concepts of how to even think about like bars and, you know, fundamental aspects of what you thought music was, just like blown to bits. And so, yeah, it was definitely really cool for that reason too, that you could kind of deconstruct everything and say, you know, what are all these pieces? How do I put them together into something that's I like?
I'm going to be hitting you guys up down the road for a letter of recommendation when I get that gap in my schedule. So don't forget this interview. Come on. I expect you to be like, hey, that guy, he's a total pro. He's a good candidate. Well, it seems like there's some optimism about, you know, touring opening back up here soon. So hopefully we'll all be back at it before too long. And, maybe we'll cross paths out there somewhere. But thank you guys for sitting down with me today and doing this. It's been great to talk to you.
Thanks for having us.
Awesome. All right, that was Mike and Bridget from Lake Street Dive on Walking the Floor. Make sure you go listen to their music, buy tickets to their shows, buy a t-shirt, you know, support the scene. I'll be back in a couple of weeks with Samantha Crane. Until then, be well, and we'll see you soon. Adios, amigos.